The information and services contained in this program are intended for educational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended as investment advice. Producers of this content are not responsible for the accuracy or validity of any information contained herein. Please consult your financial advisor prior to any investment decisions.
Governing dysfunctional governments. You know, when I agreed to speak here today, I said initially, hey, give me any subject related to CityDAO at all, anything at all. Let's make it happen. LFG, yeah. And then I started to digest this topic a little bit more. I could have picked an easier one, perhaps. You'd think if we put enough smart people in a room, we'd end up with a really good outcome. By a show of hands, how many people are satisfied with what we see right now in modern politics, in modern governance today? And by another show of hands, who says there might be room for improvement with how land ownership works or how governments work? I think that there's room for improvement. And this is what ultimately led me to being interested in joining with CityDAO. CityDAO is a group of people building a decentralized city of the future. We're social scientists, we're pioneers. We're exploring how blockchain technology can help the cities of the future be more effective. My name is Eric. I'm a lifelong entrepreneur. I built my last company to a team size of 50, doing several million ARR, and then I sold it in 2018 to go deep down the Bitcoin rabbit holes and be a digital nomad. It's awesome. And that led me to finding CityDAO, and I've been a core contributor here for maybe about a year. So when we're talking about government, I think it's helpful if we have a similar definition so we can be on the same page of what we're referring to. So before the conference started, I Googled best definition of government. And dictionary.com came up with this, and it goes, the exercise of political authority over the actions, affairs, etc. of a political unit, people, etc., as well as the performance of certain functions of this unit or body, the action of governing, political rule, and administration. Now, I think if I asked each of you what your definition of government is, it'd probably be a little bit different. I think it's also fair to say this definition might be a little dysfunctional too. So I'm going to go back in time and do a really quick recap of how we got to where we are today with modern politics. 400,000 years ago, there were a lot less humans on the planet than there were today. We were more diverse, we were less densified. And you can imagine that conversations back then probably revolved around things like who's going to lead the next hunt? Where are we going to find shelter? Who's going to stay up at night and defend us from animals while we're sleeping? And you can also imagine that if the tribe of 10, 50, 100 people, whatever it was, if they were unable to make a good decision together, they'd probably die. They'd get eaten by the wild animal. They'd freeze in the middle of the night. You can tell I'm from Canada, by the way. I'm talking about freezing when we're in the Miami heat, literally melting. Or they would die of starvation. They wouldn't have enough food. And as population grew, as time went on, and we went through the agricultural revolution, a big catalyst for change, populations densified, our population grew, industrial revolution happened, and technology also accelerated that rate of change to where we are now today. And you can imagine that decisions that a group of 10 people had to make are probably a bit different than maybe 430,000 people like the city of Miami, or 330 million people like the United States of America. As population grows and density intensifies, the complexity of decisions increases and the quantity of decisions increases. There's been a lot of things that changed over the last 400,000 years. And there's going to be a lot more things that are going to change over the next 1, 2, 3, 400 years. We might not even recognize how politics works in 500 years from now. One of the things that happened in this modern technical age is the invention of Bitcoin and Bitcoin technology, also known as blockchain. Now, I'm not here to debate whether you like Bitcoin or you don't like Bitcoin. I'm just saying it was invented, and blockchain was invented, and that's the foundation of everything that we see here today. The NFT communities, the DAO ecosystem, Web3, Web5, all of that is built on blockchain technology. And it's creating waves. And one of the waves that Bitcoin created splashed into the shores of the state of Wyoming, in particular with people like Caitlin Long and Senator Chris Rothfuss. And the state of Wyoming ended up putting together a task force, and they thought, wow, what can we do to support people in this technological age? What can we do to support and enable people to build on blockchain and explore DAOs and move forward in a harmonious way? Because it doesn't always have to be us against the system. It doesn't have to be control or anarchy. There are some people that want to bridge that gap. CityDAO's a group of those people. Wyoming State is a group of those people. And so they put together Bill 38. This is the infamous DAO bill that essentially allowed DAOs to be registered in the state of Wyoming and give them legally defensible governance rights over the DAO. Now, in CityDAO, we have people in China, Turkey, Thailand, Japan, Canada, all over the place. People have governance rights now in our treasury because of this Bill 38. And Bill 38 created its own waves. And it inspired one person to send out a tweet. And the tweet says, starting a DAO to buy and tokenize land in Wyoming. Who wants in? The tweet got shared around. Some money got raised. 40 acres of physical land was purchased in Wyoming. A DAO LLC was formed. And thus is the birth of CityDAO. CityDAO is a group of people building a decentralized city of the future. We're the first DAO to physically own real land in the real world in Wyoming and put the land in the ownership of the DAO LLC and put the governance of our treasury and of that land into the DAO LLC. We raised several $1 million through about 10,000 NFTs a while ago. Obviously, the market hit a fair bit of that. There's still over $2 million left after all of our spending. And the NFTs, the 10,000 NFTs that were sold, govern what to do with the treasury and what to do with the physical land. This is a screenshot of CityDAO providing testimony to the state of Wyoming earlier this year at the blockchain committee meeting. We work very closely in whatever capacity we can to help the next wave of legislation and policymakers make better decisions for all of us. So if you have ideas and suggestions for what the next wave of legislation and rules should be, let us know. Work with us. We're working with them, and we want to work with you too. Okay, today's talk, governing dysfunctional governments, is 3 words. I'm going to introduce a 4th word, that of politics, because I think it's very relevant. I'm going to suggest, just for conversation's sake, that we use these types of definitions when we're talking about them. I'm going to suggest that politics is a branch of philosophy that deals with how we live together, how we work together, the rules of the game. They apply to countries, they apply to DAOs. There's different rules of the game. Government is the people who enforce those rules. In a country, it could be a president. In a DAO, it could be a guild leader or a Discord mod. And that governing is the action of the government to enforce those rules. In a city, if you break the law, you might get arrested by the police. In a DAO, you might get banned from the Discord. And dysfunction is a barometer of how well or unwell something is performing compared to its intended outcome. So are the rules fair or not? Are the people enforcing those rules well or not? At CityDAO, we think that there are some dysfunctional aspects to governance and land ownership. Now, there's a lot of people in CityDAO, and there's a lot of opinions of what CityDAO really is. But some of the common threads that at least I've been able to put together are this: that there's a common sense of powerless out there. What good is a single voice? What good is my voice if I want to affect change? What happens if I go and yell it out? Is it going to happen? Probably not. And that creates this feeling of powerless. And powerless breeds apathy. And apathy breeds blame. Because if I'm not in control of what happens, then someone else must be. So if something's wrong, it can't be my fault, it must be your fault. Maybe it's your fault. Maybe it's your fault. It's not my fault. And that's not a very productive way to approach any problem. In the topic of accountability, where's the eject button for dysfunctional politicians? I'd certainly like to press it a few times. Protesting, I'm going to suggest, is not an efficient means of effecting change. Running down the streets, taking time off work, breaking windows, hurting people. There's got to be a better way. And why do things have to move so slow in a technological age? Why does it take years to change political leaders if they fail to perform as promised? Why does it take days, weeks, months to get zoning permit changes or to get building permits or even just to transfer land ownership itself? Why is it so slow? And all of this leads to being very expensive. It's a very expensive system the way that it is right now. At CityDAO, we imagine, what if anyone could submit a proposal at a city level, a state level, even a federal level, and have their voice legitimately heard and voted on by our fellow citizens? And what if this all happened using well-designed smart contracts really, really quickly, taking seconds or minutes instead of months, years, or even longer? It would be a lot more cost-effective too, wouldn't it? If there was no paperwork or middlemen or buildings to infrastructure and all this stuff, it could be a better use of money. I'm talking about the concepts of the network state. If you've never heard of the network state, here's a bonus. There's a book called The Network State, and it's available at thenetworkstate.com. And you can download it for free. There's no charge. Check it out. It's written by Balaji, and his definition in one line of a network state is A network state is a highly aligned online community with a capacity for collective action that crowdfunds territory around the world and eventually gains diplomatic recognition from pre-existing states. We're talking about a digital online community that would have a seat at the United Nations. True country-to-country negotiations in a digital online community. This is a potential future that exists for humanity, and CityDAO, along with a bunch of other projects, are working towards that future. Question for you about government. Who governs the government? If we take out all the complexities in the middle and all the layers and all this complicated stuff, and we get really down to the roots, if all of us in this country decide on one thing and we want to make it happen, guess what? It's going to happen. So I'm going to suggest that we ultimately govern the government. And we govern it maybe like this. Who's been in a Discord argument before or seen a debate happen online that you just couldn't let go? If we behave dysfunctionally, we're going to get dysfunctional results. Ultimately, the responsibility is on us. As the great and late Uncle Ben did say, with great power comes great responsibility. If we behave dysfunctionally, we get dysfunctional governments. Now, the subtitle to this event was Lessons Within a DAO Navigating Political Climates. Now, these lessons are my personal experiences. They don't represent the entire DAO. They're just things that I've gone through. Very recently, too, I'm going to spotlight a real example. In one of the many Discord servers I'm a part of, recently I ended up in a debate, an argument actually. It was getting heated and it was getting out of control. My emotions were flying and I had to make a decision. Do I continue engaging with this or do I not? I chose not. My lesson out of this was that as my emotions go up, my logic goes down. So I disengaged, okay? I wasn't being passive aggressive. That would probably be even worse. I just disengaged. And guess what? It takes two people to have an argument. If one person leaves the argument and there's only one person left, if they're arguing with themselves, that's called a mental illness. That's not an argument anymore. Now I'm passionate about that subject. I'm not demeaning it. But the point is, if you disengage from an argument, it ends. No one wins, no one loses, it just ends. And it gives time for the emotions to simmer down. So that's what I did. And as my emotions simmered down, I was able to see objectively that this person, even though I don't agree with some of their actions, they were coming from a well-intended place. They had a legitimate concern that I actually shared with them. We were on the same page about that. So my lesson out of this was to seek the truth. Don't seek to be right. Because once I was able to seek that truth, I was able to find a common ground. And from that place of common ground, we were able to start objectively working towards a solution. And so my lesson here is to rise above the conflict. I definitely don't mean, pretend that you're higher than people or that you're better than people. That would be very, very counterproductive. All I'm talking about is recognizing that everyone here in this room, we're not enemies. You're not my enemy. None of us here are. We actually all want the same thing. We want to be happy. We want our kids to be happy. We want life to continue. And we want this to be a good thing for the planet. And if we can agree on that, then we have a common ground and we can let go of the petty differences that we might have. So my takeaways here for you are threefold. The lessons are, when emotions go up, logic goes down. Seek the truth. Don't seek to be right. Rise above the conflict and seek the common ground, because ultimately you govern the government and you govern the DAO that you're a part of. And in conclusion, the path to governing dysfunctional governments is to govern ourselves a little bit better. You can find me on Twitter at MemeBrains. You can find CityDAO at CityDAO on Twitter or at CityDAO.io. Again, we're building a decentralized city of the future. Thanks for having me here today.